Well, it's increasingly accepted, the wisdom of this age is that everybody is allowed to define his or her own identity. Your gender is not determined by your chromosomes. Race is a social construct, not a matter of genetics. Jadu is simply taking that wisdom to its logical conclusion. Born a white male named Adam Wheeler, Jadu now identifies as a Filipina woman and joins us tonight. Jadu, thanks for coming on.
Oh, thanks for having me, Tuck.
So I'm not here to mock you, but just to ask you sincere questions. Among them, what does your mom think of this?
Well, you know, she did eventually find out with, you know, all the stories going on about me and about my group. Yeah, she's kind of still trying to come to the realization that I'm not exactly joking.
That you're not joking that you went from being a white man to a Filipino woman.
Well,
I mean,
sorry, I'm sorry for.
So what did she say? Did she accept that?
Well, she saw one of the stories that went on about me, and you know, she came in the door, you know, like hysterically laughing, and I didn't know what was going on. I came downstairs, and she's holding a phone with a video that was made about me on YouTube, and she was just, you know, cackling, saying, this is the best thing ever. And, you know, I can reflect on myself in the third person, and I can see why it's silly, and it is silly.
It sounds like she doesn't take it that seriously.
Yeah, and I try,
so do you take it
seriously?
I guess the reason I want to talk to you was, I've always wondered if we are telling kids, or if adults are agreeing that you can change your sex, why not change your race? Why would that be not allowed? Why would we consider that impossible?
Exactly.
When did that occur to you that you wanted to do that?
Well, in short, you know, the Filipino culture just kind of resonated with me, and you know, again, I can see in the I can look at myself in the third person, and you know, I understand it's silly, and you know, identity issues are issues. You know, it's a very small part of myself, as well as my transsexuality, but you know, a lot of people like yourself, you know, find it interesting, and I'll talk about it.
Well, I just think it's interesting that things that we thought were immutable and that scientifically remain immutable, like your sex or your race, now we're saying that you can change. I wonder, since you believe you've changed your race, do you think the rest of us spend, or the left particularly, seems to invest so much significance in race? You're this race, you're this race, each one is very different from the other. That's kind of the whole point of being a progressive now. Do you think they put too much emphasis on race?
I think they do, and I think in some instances they use race as kind of a basis to divide people, and I'm talking about what's it called? And I'm talking about intersectionality, where you have two people that are all of a sudden enemies just for simply existing. You know, I don't like that. You know, I wish people would just talk to each other instead of trying to silence each other with you know, draconian systems that they try to implement into laws.
Well, they must be deeply, I mean, I'm surprised I'm saying this, I agree with you completely. They must be deeply offended by you then.
Exactly. You know, I tell a lot of people that, you know, the LGBT community and you know, there are some left communities as well that aren't as tolerant as they may seem. I actually think a lot of the same things you do. I'm just a little bit weird.
Yeah. That's fair to say. I mean, yeah. I mean, your mom agrees. So I don't think it's news to anyone. So, like, we give all kinds of rewards based on race, and then we also punish on the basis of it. And you're saying, you're breaking the rules by saying, well, then I'm just going to change mine. I mean, that must drive the people who are making these rules totally crazy.
I suppose so. You know, I don't believe you. I don't believe you can actually change your sex, and I don't believe you can actually change your race. You know, you're born as you are. But really, that's why I refer to transgenderism, or however you would like to call it, as gender dysphoria. Like it is a problem, and even fully transitioned people, I would say, must be unhappy, because if you have to strive so differently from where you began, are you really happy? Are you?
I don't know. I can't answer that question, and I think you should know I don't think you're allowed to believe that, and probably could be arrested for saying it. So good luck, Jadu. Tell us if you need help getting out of jail. Thank you.
All right.
Emma, hi. You're neither male nor female, right?
That's true. I identify as non-binary, which means that I'm neither male nor female, and correspondent to that, I use the they, them pronoun.
And you say gender roles are damaging our society, so we need to think very carefully about language, yeah?
Yes. So a lot of our social selves are codified and encultured in the language that we use. We really use it to construct our entire society. And what's certainly true is that there is a huge variance of gender presentation and gender identity within humankind. There isn't simply
humankind,
men and women. Exactly, humankind in place of mankind.
You wouldn't say mankind, that should be,
I wouldn't, just because humankind is a more accurate descriptor, in the same way that me using they, them is a more accurate descriptor of my identity than using he or she.
Would you use Homo sapiens?
I very rarely in my life use scientific language to describe the people I work with.
Wise man, it means. Okay. But it's something, do we need to think about that?
I think we should be thinking about the evolution of language to support gender neutrality.
Yeah, got you.
And that's for a number of reasons. The first of which is that it stops this assumption that either the most important people in the room are men, or that the only people in the room are men. And secondly, it does include that wider spectrum of gender. There's an excellent quote by German linguist Louisa Pusch, who says that gender and language should be both comfortable and fair. And she was referring to German, which is one of the most strictly gender-codified languages in Europe.
German.
And English is not...
What's happening in German?
So German has a grammatical gender and a gendered pronominal system. So they use gendered pronouns and they have gendered nouns, and that's supported by the wider grammar of the language. But actually the German state is encouraging lecturers, professionals and industry to use gender-neutral language.
God,
a great example
if that had been back.
is in students. Well, so in universities, a bit like the University of Hull, universities in Germany, their lecturers are using gender-neutral language to refer to students, because it's inclusive of everyone and gives that space for trans people who are neither male nor female.
Yeah, it's a matter, Andrew, it's a matter of courtesy, this, and sensitivity, isn't it?
Courtesy is all very well. I mean, you're describing encouraging people to use certain words. My problem is when words are policed. When language becomes police, that is my problem. I mean, look, we can all go back to those sorts of things, humankind or mankind. I mean, those are sort of interchangeable now. They're synonymous anyway. We're talking about when people actively, and it is a minority of activists, it really is a minority, seek to have people disciplined or sacked because they refuse to use language that they are imposing. That's not the evolution of language, that's the imposition of language, and I think that's problematic.
I think it really depends on the context. So you may, for example, be perfectly grammatical.
But I wouldn't say, you hear what it said. That's rude, isn't it?
Yeah, I would say that it is dehumanising.
Yeah.
It shouldn't ever be a voice for the entirety of the trans community. Some people may self-select to use it, but it in general is quite a dehumanising approach.
Isn't this actually bad for women? The suffragettes would be appalled about this, wouldn't they?
Well,
they want women to be noticed. They want women to be out there. They want women to achieve, and for other women to know that they have achieved.
It's really about something.
What about people who are non-binary? What about people who are gender fluid?
We're all male and female. We've always... Yes, of course, we're all male and female. There are
what about transgender people?
There are a tiny minority of people who have intersex conditions, and there are a tiny minority of people who have some condition where they may have a female brain and a male body. Apart from this, we are all male and female, and the attempt to suggest that there is a third gender is, as far as I'm concerned, it's an ideological and a political project. It doesn't exist. The words male and female have existed throughout history, throughout the world. They refer, men are people who have penises, women are people who have vaginas. It's as simple as that. I would absolutely refuse to refer to this woman here, who's clearly a woman, as a they, because for me that would be imposing an ideological political system. Because she is. If everybody watching this programme can see that she is a woman. And that is imposing.
That's your problem. I think that's actually your
imposing.
problem. But you're imposing.
No, you are asking me to engage in an ideological, political system which I disagree with. I believe we are all male and female. And I
what they should be called is imposing an ideological system.
No,
I really want to come back and
it's
address
referring to a
just some of the
reality.
scientific
I'm off for a cup of
inaccuracies
tea.
of...
Your respect for me is already diminished if you insist that I ascribe to some ideology of third gender, which I do not agree with. If this he and she is socially constructed, how come everybody watching this, everybody in the audience, can basically identify male and female just by looking? Occasionally there are people who are more difficult to identify, and we try to be tactful, but it's not just socially ascribed. It relates to a physical reality reflected in our voices, our appearances, in all kinds of ways.
Isn't life a great spectrum? No? Don't you think? Someone must agree with me. Who wants to say something? You want to say something in a grey jumper. They want to say something.
They, yeah.
Are you they, or do I say she wants to say something?
I am a female. That's my belief system.
Do you want me to say she wants to say something?
And that is fine. However, the idea that you're saying that if this person chooses to say that they are they, that you can't engage with that because of your belief system. We live in a culture where lots of people have lots of different beliefs, as is very, very clear on today's show. We cannot say, I have this belief system, so therefore I'm going to impose it on everyone. In this, you can't do that. Like, she has a particular... They have a particular...
There we go.
Look, at least I accept that.
You know, this idea that there is an imposition of it, some people might say, well, when councils are doing it, or when universities are doing it, it is something of an imposition. And some people might be afraid to embark upon a sentence and then walk through eggshells until they get to the end of the sentence in case they say the wrong thing. And so it's not exactly liberating, it's constricting, isn't it?
Well, it's liberating people that are vulnerable.
Peter, now you work for the Daily Telegraph. I want your mission next week to go to the Telegraph and to convince the editor to use gender-neutral language from now on.
Nicky,
How will that go down?
The truth is, the Telegraph pretty much does use gender-neutral language. It doesn't use they, but it uses firefighter and it uses chair. Truth is, language is organic. It reflects the society that it comes out of. And you can impose bits of it, but ultimately, is they going to stick as a personal pronoun for one person? I kind of doubt it, because actually, that's not how most people see the world. And I think, we're kind of right on the margin here. I'm father of 2 daughters. I think, actually, firefighter is better than fireman.
Yeah.
My 2 girls, if they want to work in the fire service, terrific.
Because it's accurate.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we should get too hung up. If you want to tie yourself in knots, ultimately, the arbiter of whether that works or not will be the way people use language, and they will accept it or reject it on a basis of common sense, because there's nothing more utilitarian than language.
And quite happily...
Belinda.
We mustn't lose sight of the fact that language does refer to a reality. As a writer, I'm very aware of this. It's very important. He, she refers to a male and female reality. And I think that there is something very serious at stake if we really do start eroding concepts of male and female, which I believe is happening.
There's been a lot of talk about identity lately, but how far does it go? And is it possible to be wrong? We went to the University of Washington to find out.
Are you aware of the debate happening in Washington State around the ability to access bathrooms, locker rooms, spas based on gender identity and gender expression?
I think people should be able to have access to the facility.
I think bathrooms could and potentially should be gender neutral because there doesn't need to be a classification for differences.
I think people definitely should have the ability to go into whichever locker room they want.
I feel like at least public universities should do their best to accommodate for those who do not have a specific gender identity.
You know, whether you identify as male or female and whether your sex at birth is matching to that, you should be able to utilize the resources.
So if I told you that I was a woman, what would your response be?
Good for you. Okay, like, yeah.
Nice to meet you.
I'd be like, what? Really?
I don't have a problem with it.
I'd ask you how you came to that conclusion.
If I told you that I was Chinese, what would your response be?
I mean, I might be a little surprised, but I would say, good for you. Like, yeah, be who you are.
I would maybe think you had some Chinese ancestor.
I would ask you how you similarly came to that conclusion and why you came to that conclusion.
I would have a lot of questions, just because on the outside I would assume that you're a white man.
If I told you that I was 7 years old, what would your response be?
I wouldn't believe that immediately.
I probably wouldn't believe it, but I mean, it wouldn't really bother me that much to go out of my way and tell you no, you're wrong. I'd just be like, oh, okay, he wants to say he's 7 years old.
If you feel 7 at heart, then then so be it. Yeah, good for you.
So if I wanted to enroll in a first grade class, do you think I should be allowed to?
Probably not, I guess. I mean, unless you haven't completed first grade up to this point and for some reason need to do that now.
If that's where you feel like mentally you should be, then I feel like there are communities that would accept you for that.
I would say so long as you're not hindering society and you're not causing harm to other people, I feel like that should be an okay thing.
If I told you I'm 6 feet 5 inches, what would you say?
That I would question.
Why?
Because you're not. No, I don't think you're 6'5".
If you truly believed you're 6'5", I don't think it's harmful. I think it's fine if you believe that. It doesn't matter to me if you think you're taller than you are.
So you'd be willing to tell me I'm wrong?
I wouldn't tell you you're wrong.
No, but I say that I don't think that you are.
I feel like that's not my place as like another human to say someone is wrong or to draw lines or boundaries.
No, I mean, I wouldn't just go like, oh, you're wrong, like that's wrong to believe in it, because I mean, again, it doesn't really bother me what you want to think about your height or anything.
So I can be a Chinese woman.
You sure.
But I can't be a 6'5" Chinese woman.
Yes.
If you thoroughly debated me or explained why you felt that you were 6'5", I feel like I would be very open to saying that you were 6'5", or Chinese, or a woman.
It shouldn't be hard to tell a 5'9" white guy that he's not a 6'5" Chinese woman. But clearly it is. Why? What does that say about our culture? And what does that say about our ability to answer the questions that actually are difficult?